very much a lot to get into. Happy to sink my teeth into this with you, Nick. And like you mentioned, we get to talk all the time about soccer on the air. It's the first time we've ever talked about anything besides soccer on the air. Michael Hernandez, our lovely radio producer, just shot me a look. I don't know if you can see him through the glass there, but that was pretty funny. Anyway, all three New York area teams were in action last night in the NHL. All three were victorious. It's a rare New York City sweep if you want to include New Jersey into the New York City area, but we do here because we have some reporters who head over to New Jersey to cover that team for us. Appreciate them and all the work that they do. Wonder who they are. Anyway, all three were victorious. The Islanders took care of the Detroit Red Wings 2-0 at UBS Arena on the island. The Rangers, great 4-1 win over one of the Pacific Division's best, in the Vegas Golden Knights. That one at the Garden. And the Devils came back to beat the Central Division leading Dallas Stars on the road 3-2 in overtime. Jack Hughes picking up his 32nd goal of the year there. Rare sweep for NY Metro area teams last night. Let's start with the New York Islanders. They have one more game before the All-Star break. The Devils and Rangers both done for their midway point of the season. The Islanders will face the Knights tonight, who will be finishing up their New York City road trip. Like I said, they snapped that really crushing 6-game losing streak against Detroit, but they're still in a tough spot. 6th in the Metropolitan Division, and like you said, it's a titan of a division. It's such a tight race that you have to imagine that at this point in the season, a 6-game losing streak in January is going to be really tough for this team to come back from.
It's tough, especially in the Metro when you drop points one night and then you look up and every single team around you won, and they keep climbing up the standings. And a 6-game losing streak at this stage of the season, the Islanders were really. You were thinking they were definitely maybe a lock at a couple of weeks ago for one of those wild card spots. Maybe not a lock, but they were in the conversation, and you thought that's where they would finish. And this 6-game losing streak kind of sees them fall down the Metro. Now just the Flyers and the Blue Jackets below them. And All-Star break coming up, one more game until the All-Star break. You feel like this can be a time for the Islanders to reset, but things were looking good earlier in the season about the direction this team was going. They've got a lot of veteran presence on that team. It's a team that really underachieved last year, and you thought this was going to be that they could get things back on track. But in the Metropolitan Division, the Eastern Conference, if you take your foot off the gas pedal for 1 second, the teams catch up. We'll get to them later, but the Devils in December, they had that winning streak to start the season, then in December hit a bit of a cold stretch, and then all of a sudden all the teams in the Metro are around you. You take your foot off the gas pedal for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and next thing you know, you find yourself towards the bottom of the division. So the Islanders, for them, All-Star break's coming at a good time. It's a chance to reset and regroup and try to claw their way back up the Metropolitan Division standings.
And I think they have a really good chance to continue those good fortunes going into the All-Star break because, Vegas, like we said, they're a powerhouse in the Western Conference. Western Conference probably not as strong as the East this year, but you have to give the Knights credit where credit's due. Since they joined the league, they've been a perennial playoff team. You take away the injuries from last year, and they're probably in the playoffs then too. But they're vulnerable. They lost 3 in a row, lost to the Devils and Rangers on this road trip. It's always tough when West Coast teams come to the East Coast road trip. It's always tough when the East Coast teams go to the West. We know that if you follow the Islanders, Rangers, and Devils, the California road trip, it's a boogeyman every season. So you have to take a look at it from the opposite direction. The Knights are going to need a win going into the break for them against the Islanders. They don't want to be slipping down the Pacific Division like they had. Now they're underneath the Kraken and the Kings, although just within 1 point. And speaking of being close within points, the Islanders, although they're outside the playoffs, they're just 4 points behind the playoff lines. They're 2 games back, if we want to talk about this like baseball people. But they also have they've played 3 more games than the Penguins, Capitals, and Sabres, who are all in front of them. So it's going to be a really difficult road back. I think this win tonight, if they do get a win, would be a really good benchmark to see where this team's at. And let's not forget they have a great foundation in goal with Ilya Sorokin, who I still think is going to be the biggest challenger for Linus Ullmark of Boston for the Vezina Trophy. Linus Ullmark's been incredible, 30 wins. It's insane what he's been able to do. But another team that has a really good goaltender was also in action yesterday. They also got a good win. The New York Rangers, Igor Shesterkin is their great goaltender. You heard of him. He won the Vezina last year, and I'm not happy to say that as a Devils fan. And Nick, I know you can corroborate that, but
yes,
they were victorious over the Golden Knights last night. The Rangers had a couple tough games, a really tough schedule this last week and a half, going back to that Thursday night game against the Bruins where They looked pretty good at home, but came away short. That Bruins team, they just grind out wins like you wouldn't believe. They're a well-oiled machine. Then to follow that up with a thumping of the Panthers, where they were really dominant, took the Maple Leafs to overtime in Toronto. It's a tough thing to do, but then a 4-1, a dominant win over, albeit a vulnerable and tired Golden Knights team. But like we said, that Golden Knights team has so much quality. So these wins are some that you have to take, and you have to look at this game, and especially with Jaro Halak in goal. That's a backup goaltender who's had a really tough season. That's a really big 2 points.
And that Toronto game right before the Golden Knights win, that's a heartbreaker for the Rangers. The Mitch Marner, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful overtime winner. But for the Rangers, it's this thing where everybody expected heading into this year that all the young guys, whether it's Capo Caco, Lafreniere, are going to take that step up and sort of propel the Rangers from being that team that gets to the conference finals and loses to the Lightning, to the team that goes to the final and maybe wins it. But those steps up haven't really happened. Caco and Lafreniere have struggled at times, and they don't really look like what the Rangers thought they drafted. But then even that being said, when you have a guy like Adam Fox, who is one of the best defensemen in the entire National Hockey League, Keandre Miller,
who's been absolutely amazing.
He's been so good recently. And then you add that to Panarin and Zibanejad scoring the goals, Chris Kreider, and then you've got about as reliable of a backstop as there is in the National Hockey League in Shesterkin. This is a team that I wouldn't want to play in the playoffs, and there's a lot of Ranger fans that I know and online who make it seem like the sky's falling after every loss, that the things need to be changed, the lines have to be switched up, Hedl has to go on the power play, Trocheck has to come off the power play, all these changes. I think this Rangers team is very good. I think their experience that they got last year, coming so close to the Cup final and ultimately falling just short, I think that only serves to benefit them this year. The fact that it's the same core together, and you add a guy like Vincent Trocheck, who's been around for a while.
And Jimmy Vesey.
It's a team that could go places, but then you watch them on a night-to-night basis, and sometimes the performances just aren't there. It's a little inconsistent at times, but when the Rangers, like that game against Vegas yesterday, or the Panthers, I think Monday it was, when the New York Rangers are clicking on all cylinders, there's not really a lot of teams that can stop them.
And I think you're absolutely right, and I think we're at a point in the season where we can look at the standings in the Metropolitan Division. For as tight as they are, the Rangers in third, 4 points ahead of the Capitals in fourth, but they've also got 2 games in hand. That's going to be really tough for any of the wildcard teams to catch the Rangers. Obviously, there's no guarantees. I would say it's looking pretty solidified that the Rangers are going to be a playoff team and aren't going to be a wild card team at this point. I think the Islanders, to get back in that conversation, would have to have a really, really great month of February, really string together wins so they can, cover some ground before the late stretch of the season. A lot of trade deadline stuff is going to affect the Metropolitan Division. But before we get into that stuff, because I don't know if we will even have time, let's talk about one team that probably is in the best shape in the New York area, and that's the New Jersey Devils. They're in second place in the division, 68 points. They just 2 points behind the Carolina Hurricanes in first, who don't seem to ever lose a game when teams are chasing them in the division standings, going back to several years now that they've emerged as probably the class of the Metropolitan Division. The Devils last night, another comeback victory in overtime against the Dallas Stars, who is another team that when you play them away from home, it's a measuring stick game because they've been the best in the Central Division, bar none. And the Devils were able to come away with what was maybe not a deserved victory at times. I thought they were probably dominated through the first 2 periods, but to come back down to nothing and to have clawed back in the way that they did, Jack Hughes is the hero in overtime. You talk about getting production out of your young players. Jack Hughes has more points than the entire kid line of the New York Rangers this season. So what is the difference now in New Jersey as opposed to New York? I know I've said it, but Nick, I want to get your take on this.
The difference is 2 things. One, the young players who everybody expected to step up actually stepped up and took major steps to be better. Whether it's Jesper Bratt, Jack Hughes over the last 2 seasons, Nico Hischier have come into their own after being drafted, and now in their early 20s have turned into elite hockey players. Also, a guy like Dawson Mercer's come in to be a very, very good two-way forward. The acquisition of Dougie Hamilton. But also, the second thing is the small acquisitions to kind of bolster, what this team is about. Whether it's, someone like Ryan Graves in the last couple of years, Jonas Siegenthaler, guys who who were in the NHL but were not considered to be elite defensemen by any stretch. You bring those guys in, you bring in a veteran like Brendan Smith, you trade for Vitek Vanacek after the disaster of a goaltending situation that we saw last year with the rotating door of goalies.
7 different goalies. Not one played more than 25 games.
Vanacek's provided that stability even when Blackwood's been hurt. It's been Akira Schmid. And it's the mixture of the young guys taking steps to the next level and then being surrounded by veterans like Andre Palat or Brendan Smith who know what they're doing, and Dougie Hamilton. And it's just created this beautiful thing of it's a fast team. It's an exciting team to watch. It's, watching a guy like Jack Hughes or Jesper Bratt skate around people, it doesn't really get any better than that.
No, I said this the other day. You look at what Jack Hughes has been able to do. The goals record in a single season is held by Brian Giunta in 05-06. He scored 48. Jack Hughes is already on 33, I believe. He's got half a season to break that record. I say he does it. I say he's going to hit 100 points. He's on pace for 104. He might go down as the greatest skater in Devils history.
But the biggest difference is Jack Hughes not just taking a step up. It's that he's elite. He's a top.
He's a superstar.
He's a superstar.
He's a superstar in this league. There's no doubt about that. I don't want to have the conversation. You hear a lot of Devils fans measure up Capo Caco and Jack Hughes just because the conversation, Capo Caco, just because the conversation of all the draft stuff. You can't do that because they're in very different places in their career, and they don't have to be at the same points in their career because of when they were drafted. But if you look at the growth of the Devils, not in reference to the rest of the teams, last year they were riddled with injury. The past 10 years, honestly, taking away that season they made the playoffs in 17-18.
The Taylor Hall show.
The Taylor Hall show. This is a team. They were carried by Taylor Hall. Like, even then, they made the playoffs in spite of goaltending. If you remember, Keith Kincaid was going to be the starter.
He started the away games.
The Devils came into this season. Vitek Vanacek, Mackenzie Blackwood, they're going to split time. And when Jonathan Bernier gets back from injury, they're going to throw him into the mix, throw something at the wall, see what sticks. Right now, it's Vitek Vanacek's world, and everyone's just living in it because even if his goalie numbers, advanced stats are still middle of the pack in the league, he's kept the Devils in games. I think Mackenzie Blackwood has been, unfortunately, a scapegoat many times, but the goaltending situation in New Jersey is huge. Jack Hughes becoming the first overall pick everybody thought he could is huge. Nico Hischier having what is a Selke potential season. And, the secondary contributors, Mercer, Siegenthaler, and John Marino stepping up and becoming big-time defensemen has helped this team. And
Wojciech has been
since getting called up, filling in for Marino for the injury, and he's doing that as they're playing with 4 left-handed defensemen. That's not an easy thing to do. Brendan Smith, I thought particularly, has done really good on the offside. With that said, though, the Metropolitan Division is still the toughest in hockey. There's no doubt about that. And I think the Devils and Rangers certainly have a case to punch their ticket to the playoffs at this point. We're just 49 games in. The Islanders, I wouldn't say they're out. I think they have a chance to claw their way back, and it's going to take something spectacular, but they have the pieces to do it. I mean, Matt Barzal is a bona fide superstar as well. Talk about the Rangers. Chris Kreider is another guy who just keeps getting better and better with age. You feel like a career year last year, but he just keeps rolling. Everyone keeps rolling. We got the All-Star break coming up.